I had thought our vows meant something until I caught her manipulating our children, turning their hearts against me with carefully planted lies. My name is Richard Keller, and I'm 44 years old. Most mornings, I wake before dawn, make coffee, and review what evidence I've gathered overnight. The betrayal cut deepest when I discovered Annabelle, my wife, had drained funds from my mother's education trust for the children. Money meant for Evan and Mia's future, not her studio lease or weekend spa retreats. My shoulders tensed as reality sank in. What hurts most is remembering how normal it all seemed. Breakfast routines, cheering at Evan's baseball games, Mia's choir performances that filled me with pride, all while Annabelle whispered poison behind closed doors. I won't rage online or create public spectacles. Instead, with Dr. Huang documenting the manipulation, Lila navigating legal waters, and Ron tracking every missing dollar, I'll face her directly. The truth deserves witnesses, not spectators. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I hadn't meant to come home early that Tuesday. A canceled meeting gave me an unexpected free hour. Time I'd planned to use picking up Mia's favorite ice cream as a surprise for finishing her science project. That's how normal surprises used to work in our house. The front door barely made a sound when I stepped in. September sun slanted through the windows, painting warm rectangles across our hardwood floors. I heard their voices before I saw them. Annabelle's hushed tone carrying from the den. That deliberate whisper meant to sound private, while ensuring every word landed clearly. "Sweetie," she was telling Mia, "if Daddy really wanted to be there, he'd show up to your choir nights. He missed because it's not important to him." My chest tightened. Mia's spring concert had been last Thursday, the one where Annabelle had changed the calendar invite from 6:00 to 7:30 p.m. I'd shown up to an empty auditorium, frantic texts unanswered until she claimed I'd misunderstood the time. I stepped into the doorway. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, her science notebook open but forgotten. Evan lounged on the couch, headphones around his neck, eyes narrowed as he listened to his mother. Annabelle perched on the arm of the sofa, one hand gesturing as she spoke. "I missed," I said calmly, "because you changed the calendar invite. Again." Her head snapped up. That smile appeared, the one she used when managing inconvenient truths. "Richard, don't do this in front of them." "Then stop doing this to them," I replied. Evan folded his arms across his chest. "You said he yelled at Mom last week." "I didn't yell," I said, fighting to keep my voice level while my pulse hammered in my throat. "I told your mom not to move money from your college trust." Annabelle laughed that brittle laugh, the one that made her sound like the reasonable adult in the room. "There was an emergency. If their father would provide properly, I wouldn't have to fix everything." I set my keys on the side table and matched her energy. "You didn't fix anything, Annabelle. You paid your studio lease and a weekend at the spa. You told the kids I refused to fund their future, while you spent their future." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Is that true?" "He's gaslighting you, baby," Annabelle said, sliding to the floor beside her. "This is how he always is, tight with money, tight with love." I felt that familiar heat rising from my collar. "Remember when you'd smell Mom's apple crisp baking on Sunday afternoons? The kitchen warm, the house quiet except for the Packers game on low volume? That's what home should feel like, not this twisted battleground of half-truths." "Let's talk facts," I said, pulling out my phone. I showed them the calendar invites, both versions, side by side. Thursday's invite changed at 5:15. I have the notification. I swiped to the next screen. And here are the transfers from the trust account. One labeled Evan Spring Tuition, that went to revive Spa. Annabelle's face hardened. You're tracking my spending? Controlling much? It's not your spending. It's their college money. Money my mother left specifically for their education. Mom? Evan's voice cracked a little. You said that was for SAT prep. It was educational, she insisted, standing now. A business expense for the studio where you'll both have summer jobs. For 20 minutes, it continued. No screaming, just surgical truths meeting desperate deflections. She accused. I countered with screenshots, dates, account numbers. When Mia started crying for real, I took a deep breath. If you ever tell them I don't love them again, I said quietly, I will make sure every adult who matters sees what you're doing. She knew I meant it. The kids disappeared upstairs after that. Slammed doors and silence. Annabelle locked herself in our bedroom. I heard her crying, then talking in low tones. Through the door, I caught fragments. Concerned for my safety and unpredictable lately. And the children are afraid. At 8:30 p.m., 2 officers stood on our porch. A wellness check, they explained. A concerned call about an escalating domestic situation. I invited them in, spoke calmly, showed them the peaceful house. They took notes, nodded, explained the routine nature of their visit. I wrote down badge numbers, times, names, facts that couldn't be twisted later. By 10:15 p.m., the house had settled into uneasy quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with a manila folder labeled Receipts Den Talk, organizing printouts of calendar changes, bank statements, and notes on the officer's visit. Across the room, Annabelle tapped rapidly on her phone, messaging unknown allies. She hadn't spoken directly to me since the police left. I created a new folder on my phone, backed up the documents to my private email, and set my alarm for 6 a.m. Lila would be my first call in the morning. Whatever was coming next, I needed legal guidance before it hit. Standing to make one last cup of tea, I noticed something in the printer tray. A half-printed document with Petition for Temporary, visible at the top before the paper had jammed. My hands went cold. Had Annabelle already drafted legal papers while I documented today's events? I left it exactly where it was, took a mental snapshot, and walked quietly back to the guest room where I'd been sleeping for the past week. I slept maybe 3 hours before my alarm buzzed. At 6:05 a.m., I was sitting on the edge of the guest bed, phone in hand. Lila picked up on the second ring. Richard, early for a Wednesday. Sorry about the time. I kept my voice low. Something's happening here. I forwarded her the photos I'd taken last night. The jammed petition, calendar screenshots showing the edited choir night invites, and bank statements from the trust account. I think Annabelle's filing for something today, I said. The printer jammed on Petition for Temporary. Temporary what? Restraining order? Custody? Lila made a humming sound as she reviewed the documents. Could be either. Both follow similar formats. Her voice had that steady, measured tone that reminded me why I'd hired her. What's your plan for the day? Work. Kids to school. Meeting with our CPA about the trust. Good. Do 3 things today, she said. First, request family therapy with a court-approved reunification counselor. I'll text you Dr. Huang's information. He's excellent with parental alienation cases. Second, don't send reactive texts or emails to Annabelle. Document everything, but keep communication minimal and factual. Third, start separating finances if you haven't already. I wrote everything down. What about the kids? Be normal. Be present. Record your interactions if Connecticut law allows, which it does as long as you're participating in the conversation. I thanked her and hung up, then immediately emailed our insurance about coverage for family therapy with Dr. Huang. By 6:45, I was downstairs making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, sliced apples. Routine as armor. Mia appeared first, spelling book in hand. Dad, can you quiz me? Sure. I flipped eggs with one hand, held her book with the other. Conscience. Conscience, she spelled carefully. Perfect. I slid eggs onto a plate. Benevolent. She spelled it right, too. I remembered how, when she was 6, we'd practice spelling during dinner. Annabelle would give hints with little songs. That was before the studio failed, before the money got tight, before the lies started. Evan slouched in next, baseball glove tucked under his arm. "Is there practice today?" I asked. "Coach moved it to 4:30, he mumbled, reaching for the toast. I made a mental note. "I can pick you up at 6 Mois then." Annabelle hadn't emerged yet. I opened my phone's voice memo app and pressed record. "It's Wednesday, May 12th. I'll drop Mia at school at 7:45 a.m. I'll take Evan to baseball practice at 4:30 p.m. and pick him up at 6:00 p.m. Dinner at home by 6:45 p.m. I saved the recording, then sent an email to Ron, our family CPA since my mother's days. "Ron, need an urgent audit of the Children's Education Trust disbursements for the past 6 months. Available to meet today? Richard." While the kids finished breakfast, I called Portia and Hugh. "Richard." Porcia's voice held that careful neutrality she'd adopted since things got rough. "Is everything all right? I'd like to have dinner on Friday to discuss some financial matters concerning the kids," I said. "It's important." A pause. "Annabelle mentioned you've been difficult lately. That's part of what I'd like to clarify," I replied evenly. "With documentation." Hugh took the phone. "Friday at 7, our place." After breakfast, I got a reply from Ron. 3 p.m. today. Bring any statements you have. We were walking out the door when Annabelle finally came downstairs, phone pressed to her ear. She gave the kids quick hugs without meeting my eyes. "The temporary orders can be filed today?" I heard her say as she turned away. "Good. Yes, I have documentation of his controlling behavior." My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral for the kids. "Ready to go?" I asked them. The drop-offs were smooth. Mia gave me a quick side hug before running to meet her friends. Evan nodded goodbye, a little less hostile than yesterday. When I pulled back into our driveway, Annabelle was still on the phone in the kitchen. I stood in the doorway just long enough to hear, "The evaluator will see how he restricts access to their activities." Yes, plus the financial control. "I can do an emergency hearing if needed." I quietly took out my phone, took a screenshot of the time and date, and recorded the call duration I'd witnessed. Then I backed out silently and headed to my car. It was 2:40 p.m. when I pulled into Ron's parking lot. A knot of anticipation in my chest. What would he find in 6 months of trust disbursements? I needed facts, not feelings. Ammunition for Friday's dinner with the in-laws. Ron greeted me with a handshake and a concerned look. His office smelled of coffee and old paper, unchanged since he'd helped set up my mother's trust 15 years ago. "I pulled everything," he said, opening a folder. "The language in your mother's trust is very specific, Richard. Funds are exclusively for education, medical emergencies, or first home purchases after age 25. He opened a ledger, highlighting a series of transactions. The first one jumped out immediately. Evan, spring tuition, with an arrow pointing to a bank statement showing a payment to Revive Tanning and Spa. I stared at the mislabeled transaction, my throat tightening. "Show me everything." Ron nodded grimly. "There's a pattern." He slid several flagged pages across his desk. "Over the last 6 months, approximately $11,200 has been withdrawn from the Education Trust with education-related memos, but the actual destinations..." His finger traced down to highlighted transfers. Studio lease payments, day spa weekends, a designer handbag purchase coded as Mia, music camp deposit. My hands curled into fists under the table. She used our children's futures for a fucking handbag? "There's more." Ron adjusted his glasses. 3 withdrawals labeled as Evan baseball equipment went to a resort in Palm Springs. Weekend dates. I remembered those weekends. Annabelle had said she was visiting her college roommate. I'd kept the kids, made pancakes, helped with science projects. Was she alone at this resort? I asked, voice hollow. Ron hesitated. The transactions only show location and amount, Richard, not companions. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I need copies of everything. Already prepared. He handed me a manila folder. I've highlighted the concerning transactions. Would you like me to prepare a memo for Friday's meeting with the in-laws? Yes. Clinical. Factual. No editorializing. I photographed each page with my phone as backup. Is the trust salvageable? Ron's expression softened. Your mother built good protections. If the funds are returned, the tax consequences can be managed. The bigger issue is preventing future misuse. I left Ron's office at 5:20, driving home with the folder on the passenger seat like a bomb that could detonate my children's security. My mother had saved for years to create that trust. Hospital shifts, overtime, careful budgeting, all to give her grandchildren opportunities she never had. When I walked in, Evan was doing homework at the kitchen counter while Mia colored at the table. Annabelle was nowhere in sight. Hey guys, I said, setting down my briefcase. I scheduled something for us tomorrow. Dr. Huang thinks it might help if we all talk a bit. Evan looked up suspiciously. Like therapy? Sort of. He suggested parallel sessions to start. You two together, then adults separate. No pressure to say anything you don't want to. Mia twisted her colored pencil. Is it because of the fighting? I crouched to her eye level. It's because sometimes families need a neutral person to help them communicate better. I squeezed her hand. Nothing that happens is your fault, okay? I started boiling water for pasta. Annabelle appeared in the doorway as I was chopping vegetables. You scheduled therapy without discussing it with me. She crossed her arms. Dr. Huang is court-approved. I've emailed you the intake forms. I continued chopping, keeping my voice even. We need to talk about the trust disbursements Ron found. Her expression flickered. What are you talking about? The spa weekends, studio rent, designer purchases, all drawn from the kids' education fund. She lowered her voice, glancing at the children. There were emergencies. A Prada bag is not an emergency, Annabelle. I dumped the vegetables into a pan. Your parents are coming Friday. We're going to review everything in the dining room, quietly. You're involving my parents? Her eyes widened. This is our business. It's the children's money, their future. That makes it family business. I stirred the sauce, keeping my back to her to control my expression. We'll handle it privately. With dignity. That's my offer. Dinner was tense. Annabelle picked at her food, sending occasional texts under the table. Mia pushed her plate away after 2 bites, her eyes darting between us. Evan broke the silence. Is there still money for college? The question hit me like a punch. My 14-year-old son shouldn't be worrying about this. Yes, I said firmly. Your grandmother's trust is still intact, and any irregularities will be corrected. In fact, starting next week, I'll show you both monthly statements so you always know exactly what's there. Mia's shoulders relaxed slightly. Can I still go to art camp? Absolutely, I promised. That's exactly what the money is for. After dinner, Annabelle volunteered to do dishes, unusual for her. While I helped Evan with algebra, I noticed her texting rapidly, her expression shifting between determination and something darker. When the kids headed upstairs, she made a call in the laundry room, voice too low to hear. As she passed me in the hallway, she whispered to someone on the phone, "He won't see this coming." She glanced back, realizing I'd heard, and quickly ended the call with a tight smile. I walked into Dr. Huang's office at 9:01 a.m. Thursday morning, carrying a folder of documentation. The office was calm, walls painted a soft blue, comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, a small desk tucked in the corner. Dr. Huang greeted me with a firm handshake and a neutral smile. Mr. Keller, thank you for coming in. Please, have a seat. I sat down, placing my folder on the coffee table between us. I appreciate you seeing us on short notice. Dr. Huang nodded. Family conflict requires prompt attention. I understand this is a difficult time. He opened a notebook. Could you describe the current situation from your perspective? I'll stick to facts, I said, opening my folder. On Tuesday, I heard my wife telling our children that I don't love them as much as she does. When confronted, she claimed I yelled at her about finances. I slid across the transcript I'd typed up. This is what was said verbatim. Dr. Huang reviewed it without expression. And the calendar issues you mentioned? I pulled out printouts of the calendar invitations side by side. Here are the original invitations for Mia's choir performances, and here are the edited versions sent after I confirmed attendance. I tapped the dates. You'll notice the times were changed by 2 hours. Dr. Huang made notes. I'd like to schedule sessions with the children for later today. Would 4 p.m. work? Yes. I'll bring them directly after school. And your wife? She's aware. I expect she'll attend her own intake. Dr. Huang studied me. Mr. Keller, my role is to help facilitate healthier family communication. I'm not here to take sides. I nodded. I understand. I'm not looking for an ally. I'm looking for someone who can help my kids hear truth without static. The remainder of the intake session went smoothly. I kept everything factual. Dates, times, specific statements. No characterizations, no mind reading, no assumptions about Annabelle's motivations. Just what happened, when it happened, and who said what. After the session, I headed to work for a few hours before picking up Evan from baseball practice. He climbed into the passenger seat, sweaty and quiet. How was practice? I asked, pulling away from the curb. Fine. He stared out the window. We're meeting Dr. Huang at 4. Mia will be there too. He sighed. Mom says you're just trying to control the narrative. I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my voice even. I'd like Dr. Huang to help us all communicate better. No narratives, just honest conversation. We picked up Mia from her friend's house. Her face brightened when she saw me, then fell as she noticed Evan's mood. The silent treatment continued until we reached Dr. Huang's office. Dr. Huang welcomed the kids warmly, inviting them into a room with comfortable beanbags and a small table with art supplies. I waited in the reception area, thumbing through emails on my phone. Nearly an hour later, Dr. Huang invited me in. The kids looked drained, but somehow lighter. Mr. Keller, Mia and Evan have shared some concerns I'd like to address, Dr. Huang said. Mia mentioned she's afraid you'll yell about her grades. Mia looked down at her shoes. Mom said you'd be really mad about my math test. And Evan, Dr. Huang continued, mentioned you gave up on his baseball aspirations. I took a deep breath. May I respond? Dr. Huang nodded. Mia, I have never and would never yell at you about grades. I care about your effort, not perfect scores. I looked at her directly. Do you remember me ever yelling about a test? She shook her head slowly. Evan, regarding baseball, was this about the travel team? He nodded. Mom said you refused because you didn't think I was good enough. I've forwarded the emails to Dr. Huang, I said quietly. I suggested a local competitive league that wouldn't require missing school, plus tutoring to keep your grades up. The travel team required overnight stays 3 weekends a month. Dr. Huang made a note. I've reviewed those emails. The alternatives you offered were substantial. The session continued productively, with Dr. Huang carefully mediating. The kids seemed more relaxed by the end, less guarded. As we prepared to leave, Dr. Huang scheduled individual follow-ups for the following week. Walking to the car, Evan actually smiled at something Mia said, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in days. When we arrived home at 6:15, the house was quiet. Annabelle wasn't there. I started preparing dinner, feeling cautiously optimistic about the therapy session. My phone buzzed at 6:20 p.m. I wiped my hands and checked the notification. A court filing alert. My stomach dropped as I read the document. Annabelle had filed for a temporary restraining order and emergency custody, citing emotional volatility and concerns for the children's well-being. I stared at the screen, stunned. The filing had been submitted at 5:30 p.m., while we were still in therapy. At 6:23 p.m., I forwarded the entire document to Lila with a brief message. Need to discuss strategy ASAP. Available tomorrow morning? 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Lila. Prepare for a courtroom surprise. Expect edited audio. Friday evening arrived with the low-pressure feeling of an approaching storm. I spent the afternoon arranging financial statements on my dining room table with the precision of a museum curator. Each transaction had its own page, with a yellow highlight and a sticky note explaining the discrepancy. I straightened the folders one final time as the doorbell rang at exactly 6:01 p.m. Hugh and Portia stood on the porch, him in a cardigan despite the warm evening, her with perfect posture, and that signature strand of pearls she wore for family occasions. The small talk was brief and stilted, a formality we all suffered through while Annabelle arrived 15 minutes late. Sorry, had to finish a call, she said, breezing in without making eye contact with me. She kissed her parents on their cheeks, then settled into what had always been her chair at the head of the table. Not tonight. Thanks for coming, I said, taking my seat at the head. I know everyone's busy. Richard, is this really necessary? Annabelle sighed dramatically. I've told you the trust money is being used for the children. I nodded to Ron's memo, positioned in front of Hugh. That's exactly what we need to discuss. Hugh, always the accountant even in retirement, adjusted his bifocals and leaned over the document. His finger traced a line titled Boutique Lease Deposit, while Portia picked up a statement labeled Marketing Retainer. The room went quiet except for the occasional rustle of paper. I remembered dinners at this table when laughter drowned out everything else. Mia learning to use chopsticks. Evan telling jokes that made no sense, but we'd laugh anyway. The memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life. The trust my mother established, I explained, opening the original deed, has very specific language. Funds are restricted for educational expenses only. College primarily, but also approved enrichment programs and school-related costs. Hugh looked up, his expression serious. This boutique lease, $22,000, came from the educational trust? Yes, I said. Along with the marketing costs, the website redesign, and several other business expenses for Annabelle's studio. Annabelle rolled her eyes. Oh, please. I've been running that studio for the kids' future. Everything I do is for them. Including the spa weekend in Sonoma? I asked quietly, sliding another document toward the center of the table. Portia's frown deepened as her eyes moved down the page. What's this notation? Evan? Spring tuition? That's how the withdrawal was labeled when it left the trust, I explained. The funds were transferred to Annabelle's personal account, then used for a tanning package and weekend stay at Golden Door Spa. This is ridiculous, Annabelle said, her voice rising. He's twisting everything, Mom. This is exactly what he does. Gaslights me, makes me look bad. Richard's just being controlling about money like always. Hugh adjusted his glasses again, a habit when he was uncomfortable. Annabelle, these records are quite clear. The deposits and withdrawals have timestamps, authorization codes. Dad, seriously? You're taking his side? Annabelle stood up, hands flat on the table. He's manipulating you both. Portia, who normally defended her daughter reflexively, hesitated. Her manicured finger tapped on a highlighted section showing Evan Spring Tuition, mapped directly to non-education charges. Belle, darling, she said carefully, what exactly is this charge for? The confrontation continued for another 40 minutes. Annabelle cycled through defensiveness, tears, and indignation, while Hugh and Portia gradually fell silent, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. "All I want," I said finally, "is your support for some simple rules going forward. The trust stays locked for its intended purpose. The kids get regular statements showing what's there for their future. And we all agree to stop telling them things that aren't true." Hugh nodded slowly. Portia looked torn but didn't object. Annabelle gathered her purse with shaking hands. "You've always been so good at this, making yourself the reasonable one while painting me as crazy. Well done, Richard." After they left, I checked my email. A preliminary note from Dr. Huang had arrived during our meeting. "Initial assessment indicates maternal gatekeeping behaviors. Recommend increased parenting time with father pending court review. Will formalize in report." I felt a weight lift from my chest. Someone else could see what was happening. I texted Evan and Mia. "Movie night at my place tomorrow approved. Already notified Mom. Your choice of film and takeout." Evan responded almost immediately with a pizza emoji. Mia sent back a heart. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from Annabelle. The subject line read, "Listen carefully." Attached was an audio clip, just 10 seconds long. My own voice, cold and clear. "You won't recognize your life." I'd spent the weekend preparing for this moment, reviewing notes, organizing files, rehearsing responses to worst-case questions. Now, sitting in the courthouse hallway Monday morning, I still felt my heartbeat in my throat. The status conference would either validate everything I'd been documenting or set us back months. Lila arrived 15 minutes early, perfectly composed in a navy suit. "Ready?" she asked, setting her briefcase down. "As I'll ever be," I said, straightening my tie. "Did you review the full recording?" She nodded. "It's queued up. Trust the process, Richard." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, intimate almost, with polished wood and the smell of lemon furniture polish. Annabelle arrived with her attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who kept checking his phone. She didn't look at me. When the evaluator presented their interim report, I forced myself to breathe normally. The words washed over me like a wave of validation. "Evidence suggests patterns consistent with parental gatekeeping," the evaluator stated. "Children report conflicting information about schedule changes and financial matters. Recommend increased parenting time with father pending further assessment, along with strict guidelines for communication transparency." The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched at the end of her nose, listened attentively. She reviewed the written report for what felt like hours, but was probably 2 minutes. "I see reference here to an audio recording submitted by Mrs. Keller," she said finally. "Something about threatening language?" Annabelle's attorney stood quickly. "Yes, Your Honor. We have evidence of Mr. Keller stating, and I quote, 'You won't recognize your life when I'm done.'" The judge looked at me over her glasses. "Context, please." Lila rose calmly. "We have the full recording, Your Honor. With your permission?" After the judge nodded, Lila played the unedited version. My voice filled the courtroom. "Annabelle, if you keep telling our children I don't love them, if you keep taking from their future, if you keep manipulating schedules to make me look unreliable, then you need to understand something. I will document everything. I will protect them through proper channels. I will establish boundaries that can't be crossed. And if you keep this up, you won't recognize your life when I'm done, because I will make sure everyone who matters sees exactly what you're doing." The room went quiet when it finished. "That's boundary-setting language," the judge said, looking directly at Annabelle. "Not a threat." She then laid out the temporary orders, expanded visitation with me, financial transparency requirements, continued therapy, and a clear warning against parental alienation or coaching. "This is not a game," she told both of us. "These are your children's emotional lives we're talking about. I expect both of you to prioritize their well-being over winning points." I felt dizzy with relief walking out of that courtroom. The system had worked exactly as it should. Saturday morning, I celebrated with the kids by making pancakes. They turned out black on one side, golden on the other. My specialty. "How do you even manage this?" Evan laughed, poking at his stack. "It defies physics." Mia carefully cut around the burned parts. "It's a talent, Dad." "A questionable one," I admitted, sliding more butter their way. Sunday evening, we sprawled across the living room floor working on a 1,000-piece puzzle of the Grand Canyon. Evan was surprisingly patient with it, matching colors and patterns. Mia had a gift for finding the exact piece we needed. I remembered a trip we'd taken there years ago. Mia, afraid to look down from the observation point. Evan tossing pebbles and listening for echoes, which we quickly stopped. The memory felt like something I could touch again. "Dad?" Mia asked, snapping me back to the present. "Were you always this fun?" The question stunned me. "I hope so," I said carefully. "I've always tried to be." "Mom said you changed," she mumbled, focusing intently on the puzzle piece in her hand. I just nodded and passed her another edge piece. Some corrections weren't worth making in the moment. Some truths would reveal themselves with time. I documented each pickup and drop-off meticulously that week. Timestamps, who said what, how the kids seemed. Normal routine with no hitches, until Wednesday night. The emergency motion arrived via email at 10:17 p.m. I nearly dropped my phone reading it. Annabelle had assembled what she called a proof packet, allegedly documenting dangerous, volatile behavior toward the children. She'd attached more edited clips, taken statements from her mother, and even included photos of Evan looking upset that I recognized from a baseball game where his team had lost. "Unbelievable," I whispered to my empty kitchen. I forwarded everything to Lila immediately, typing rapidly. "Need to address this ASAP. I have the full context for every claim. Can Ron connect us with Peter from Digital Forensics to check metadata by morning?" While waiting for her response, my phone buzzed with a notification from the neighborhood app. Mr. Delgado, our neighbor with the corner house, had posted something about porch camera footage. My hands shook slightly as I opened the app. The preview showed a still image from his doorbell camera. Annabelle on his porch with Mia, their backs to the camera. The caption read, "Found some interesting footage from last week. Thought certain parties might want to review it before court tomorrow." I got to Mr. Delgado's house at 7:30 a.m. sharp, coffee mug in hand to fight the fog of another sleepless night. He answered the door in a faded Twins baseball cap and flannel robe. "Richard," he nodded, ushering me inside. "Figured you'd want to see this sooner rather than later." His living room was tidy but lived in, family photos everywhere. He led me to a small desk setup in the corner where his computer monitor displayed a paused video. "I caught this last Tuesday," he said, clicking play. "My doorbell gets your driveway in frame." The footage showed Annabelle kneeling in front of Mia on our driveway beside the car. The timestamp read 7:48 a.m. Their backs were to the camera, but the audio was surprisingly clear. "Remember what we practiced," Annabelle was saying. "If Daddy asks about the science project, tell him he forgot to help you. Say it loud, okay? He promised to help, but never showed up." Mia's small voice. "But he did help. We made the volcano together. That was a different project. Just say what I told you. It's important." My stomach knotted. "Mr. Delgado didn't look at me, just queued up the next clip. This one from Thursday afternoon. Annabelle leaning down to Evan's ear at the driver's side window of her car. "Remember, he's not safe when he's mad. If he raises his voice, text me right away." Evans mumbled, "Okay," was barely audible. "Jesus," I whispered. "There's more," Mr. Delgado said, showing me 3 additional clips, all variations on the same theme. Coaching, planting ideas, creating fear. I rubbed my eyes. "Mr. Delgado." "Just Delgado is fine." "Delgado. I can't tell you how much this matters. Would you be willing to transfer these securely to the court evaluator? And to the judge's clerk? He nodded. Already figured you'd ask. I wrote down the instructions from that neighborhood email you sent about security protocols. I managed to smile. Thanks for being thorough. I hate liars, he said simply. Especially when kids get caught in the middle. I watched him transfer the files, including proper metadata and timestamps. When he finished, I shook his hand. I'm not looking for a circus, I told him. Just truth in the right rooms. That's why I showed you instead of posting it publicly, he replied. Kids deserve better than social media drama. Back home, I called Lila and explained what I'd seen. We crafted a plan. Kitchen table, face to face, with witnesses who mattered. Don't make it a show, she warned. Make it impossible to spin. At 4:55 p.m., I set up my laptop at the kitchen table. Dr. Huang joined by video, his office bookshelves visible behind him. Leela called in on speaker, her voice filling the kitchen. All set? Lila asked. Ready, I confirmed. The front door opened at 5:02 p.m. Annabelle walked in, expression shifting from irritation to wariness when she saw the setup. What's this? She demanded. Please sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. She hesitated, then sat. If this is some kind of ambush, this is a conversation with accountability, I cut in. Dr. Huang is here as a witness and professional observer. Lila is recording this call with your knowledge, per California law. I placed a folder on the table. First, Ron has completed the trust audit. The total is $28,342 removed from educational funds for non-educational purposes. Her face flushed. Those were emergencies. Second, I continued, Mr. Delgado's security camera captured some concerning interactions. I pressed play on the first clip. Annabelle's expression changed from defiance to shock as her own voice filled the room, instructing Mia to lie about the science project. When it finished, I played the second clip. Then, the third. Dr. Huang watched without comment. Leela remained silent on the line. You will stop lying in this house, I said, when the last clip ended. You will return every dollar you took from the trust. You will agree to the therapist's plan, or the evaluator will see these videos. And your parents will too. She stared at me, then smirked. You think you're so clever. No, I said. I think you're deliberately harming our children. You're turning everyone against me, she shouted, standing up. No, Annabelle. I matched her energy, but stayed seated. You did that. I'm just letting them see you. Her face contorted. I was scared of losing them. You weren't scared, I replied. You were greedy. For control. For money that wasn't yours. For being the hero. Hear me. We're done. The kids will know exactly why. Her eyes narrowed. I will bury you, Richard. You have no idea what I'm capable of. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. This little recording session won't help you. It already has, I said quietly. After the door slammed, Dr. Huang cleared his throat. I'll be noting this interaction in my report. Thank you, I said. Richard, Lila spoke from the speaker, send me a summary right away. Then upload those clips to the evaluator's portal. I ended both calls at 6:05 p.m. By 6:10, I'd emailed Lila a detailed summary and uploaded all clips to the secure portal. At 6:32, my email pinged. The clerk's office. Judge Brennan has reviewed recent submissions and advanced tomorrow's hearing to 9:01 a.m. All parties required to attend. The courthouse hallway hummed with quiet tension Friday morning. I stood beside Lila, watching as Dr. Huang nodded to us from across the marble floor. The court evaluator arrived moments later, carrying a sealed manila envelope. Neither made eye contact with Annabelle, who stood with her attorney, a thin man whose suit seemed one size too large. Ready? Lila asked. I nodded, my throat dry. As I'll ever be. The bailiff called our case at 9:03 a.m. We filed into the courtroom, taking our places at opposite tables. Judge Brennan, a woman in her 60s with silver-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense expression, reviewed documents without looking up. "I've reviewed the materials submitted yesterday," she began, her voice crisp in the quiet room, "including video evidence from a neighbor's security system and financial documentation regarding the children's educational trust." She looked directly at Annabelle. "Ms. Keller, these materials show what appears to be deliberate coaching of minor children to make false statements about their father." Annabelle's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, those recordings lack context." "I've watched them in their entirety," Judge Brennan interrupted. "The context is quite clear." She lifted a separate document. "Additionally, the financial audit conducted by Ronald Pierce, CPA, demonstrates misuse of restricted funds specifically designated for educational purposes." I kept my eyes forward, my breathing even. Next to me, Lila made a brief note on her legal pad. "The court finds that the temporary orders issued last week were based on incomplete and potentially misleading information." Judge Brennan adjusted her glasses. "Therefore, I am restoring and expanding Mr. Keller's custody arrangement, effective immediately." Relief washed through me, but I remained still. "Furthermore," she continued, "Ms. Keller is ordered to reimburse the educational trust in full, with documentation to be provided to this court within 30 days. She outlined additional terms: required co-parenting therapy, penalties for interference with scheduled time, and restrictions on communications. Each word felt like a brick being laid in a wall of protection around my children. "Violation of these orders will result in contempt proceedings," Judge Brennan concluded. "We'll reconvene for review in 90 days. Are there any questions?" Our attorneys responded appropriately. 20 minutes later, we were dismissed. In the hallway, Hugh approached me, his face drawn and pale. Portia stood several feet away, her arms crossed tightly. "Richard," Hugh's voice was low, strained. "I need to apologize. I should have seen what was happening." I nodded once. "The kids need stable grandparents, Hugh. That's what matters now." "We'll do better," he promised. His eyes darted to where Annabelle stood with her attorney. Portia refused to meet her daughter's gaze. The drive home felt surreal. I texted Evan that the judge had made her decision and that I'd pick them up after school. His reply came instantly. "Already packed a duffel." Annabelle arrived at the house minutes after I did. I waited in the foyer as she walked in, her face tight with barely controlled rage. "You engineered this," she hissed. "No," I replied calmly. "I simply showed the truth." "They'll hate you eventually," she said. "Children always see through manipulators." "That's exactly what happened," I agreed. "Just not the way you planned." I took a deep breath and delivered the boundaries I'd rehearsed. "You don't get access to my life, my time, or my love anymore. You get the schedule, you get rules, and you get consequences. That's it." Her expression flickered. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said evenly. "Not anymore." She left without another word. At 3:15 p.m., I picked up the kids from school. Evan climbed into the front seat, a large duffel bag between his feet. Mia slid into the back, clutching her backpack. "Is it really over?" Mia asked quietly. "The fighting is," I promised. "We have a new schedule. You'll still see Mom, but there are clear rules now." When we reached home, Mia wrapped her arms around my waist. "Can I sleep over tonight?" "It's not sleeping over anymore," I told her gently. "This is your home too. You can stay whenever you want, within our schedule." Her smile was small, but real. Evan dragged his duffel upstairs without a word, but I caught the relief in his posture. At 5:30 p.m., I printed copies of the new custody schedule and placed one on the refrigerator, held by a baseball-shaped magnet. I texted the digital version to all parties: Annabelle, her parents, Lila, and Dr. Huang. My phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Urgent, lease default, Keller Design Studio." Annabelle's studio landlord was inquiring about missed payments and threatening eviction. 2 weeks later, I woke to the sound of clattering pans downstairs and Evan's muffled cursing. I smiled into my pillow. Some battles weren't worth fighting, like his insistence on cooking breakfast every Saturday, despite his limited skills. I pulled on a faded Northwestern sweatshirt and headed downstairs. The kitchen smelled of burnt butter and coffee. Evan stood at the stove, furiously scraping at what might have once been scrambled eggs. "Morning, Dad," he said without looking up. "Morning, Chef." I poured myself coffee. "Need rescue operations?" He scowled. "I got it. They're just... well done." Mia sat cross-legged at the table, colored pencils scattered around her sketchbook. Her tongue poked slightly from the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. "What are you working on?" I asked, peering over her shoulder. She tilted the sketchbook to show me a surprisingly detailed drawing of our backyard oak tree. "For art class, Ms. Winters says I might get to display at the district show." "It's really good, Mia." I squeezed her shoulder gently. Evan triumphantly slid 3 plates onto the table. The eggs were brown at the edges and suspiciously watery in the middle. "Breakfast is served. Looks interesting," I said, taking a cautious bite. "Not terrible, actually. Just enthusiastic." After breakfast, I retrieved the folder I'd prepared the night before. "Got something for you both." I slid printed statements across the table, one for each of them. Monthly trust report, as promised. Evan picked his up immediately. "This is all our college money?" "Every penny." I pointed to the different sections. "This column shows what's in there now. This one shows growth from last month. And these are the education expenses we've already paid out." "Like your spring tuition." Mia traced the numbers with her finger. "It's a lot. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you had options." I tapped the paper. "This money has one job: your education. It doesn't get touched for anything else." "Not anymore." "Mom's studio closed," Evan said suddenly. "Did you know?" I nodded. "I heard." "Is that because of the money she has to pay back?" Mia asked quietly. "Partly, but that's not something you need to worry about." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "Your job is school, activities, friends, being kids. The money stuff is adult business." "When do I see Mom next?" Mia asked, changing subjects. I gestured to the calendar on the fridge. "Tuesday after school. Ms. Patterson will be there too." Ms. Patterson was the court-appointed supervisor. Annabelle had fought it initially, but Judge Brennan had been clear. Supervised visits until the evaluator recommended otherwise. "How long will Ms. Patterson have to be there?" Evan asked. He hadn't seen Annabelle in 10 days. His choice. "That depends on a lot of things," I answered honestly. "Dr. Huang will help figure that out." Our therapy sessions continued twice weekly. Dr. Huang had noted improvement but emphasized we had a long road ahead. I'd documented every handoff, every call, every text, timestamps, screenshots, voice memos. The manila folder system had expanded to a dedicated filing cabinet. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with Annabelle's name. I stepped onto the back deck to take it. "Richard." Her voice sounded tired. "Can we talk? Without lawyers? Without therapists? Just us?" "About the kids' schedule," I asked neutrally. "About us? I think we should consider another chance. For the family." I watched a cardinal land on the feeder. "There is no us anymore, Annabelle. Just co-parents who follow rules. You can't just erase 15 years. "I didn't," I interrupted. "You did. With every lie, every manipulation, every dollar taken." Silence stretched between us. "I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment," she finally said. "The studio's gone. My parents barely speak to me. Is that what you wanted?" "What I wanted was honesty," I replied. "What I wanted was respect. What I got was betrayal. So now we have boundaries." After dinner and dishes, with the kids upstairs, I sat alone on the deck. The spring air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass from next door. Mr. Delgado waved from his yard, and I lifted my hand in return. "You know what's strange about justice? It doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's just the quiet closing of doors." Annabelle's studio shuttered. Her social circle shrank. Her parents' disappointment weighed on her. Not because I orchestrated a public takedown. I never posted a single word online, never called friends to spread gossip, but because truth has a way of traveling through the rooms where lies lived. I promised the kids I'd keep their trust statements transparent every month, show them exactly what's theirs, teach them to protect it, build the foundation that Annabelle tried to crack. So if you're sitting there wondering what to do when betrayal knocks on your door, let me ask you this. Will you choose the flash of a public fight or the steady weight of private proof? Because I've tried both paths now, and I can tell you, receipts speak louder than screaming, and truth delivered face to face leaves no place to hide. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.